Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle with Brad Kooima Kooima Varilek. Well, we're seeing some mixed trade in both grain and livestock futures this morning. Brad, we've already seen a little two-sided trade in the cattle market. Let's start off there. A really disappointing day yesterday. We'll start off with that.
That would be the understatement of the day, I would say, for me anyway.
Yeah. So what happened, Brad? I mean, was it all technical? Because I know we failed at the 50-day moving average, but was there a fundamental reason for it?
Well, if there was a fundamental reason for it, then it escaped me. And thanks for having me on, Michelle. And if these people don't know it already, guess what? The market more often will surprise me, and I'll sit here and stumble around and try to come up with an explanation for a market that I don't understand. Where we were at 9:30 yesterday was what I thought made sense. Big opening led by the front end, a market that was reacting to the first big major winter storm, which in fact I would say was worse than advertised here if you back up till Friday when we were trading. And then followed up here with another system coming at the Southwest here early next week. So to me, it made sense for the February, particularly when you look at it from a longer view of where we ought to be from a basis standpoint. What typically the basis would be, basis is the difference between futures and cash. Okay, normally February would be a $2 or $3 premium to cash, and instead it's a $3 to $6 discount to cash. So I thought, well, now surely the February cattle will catch up. I was wrong. And the way we finished, I would say, failing at the 50-day was disappointing. You had the first day of the Goldman Sachs roll, which maybe put a little more pressure in the Febs, maybe, but we all know that's coming. That shouldn't be that big a deal. Just sitting here, it felt like those of us that were friendly thought, well, let's get our stuff bought. And then when we ran out of that buying power, it's just like there was nobody left to buy it. I don't know. To me, this is more sensible today. I'm glad we're coming right back. Take these Feb cattle back to 100 higher, have them gaining on the back months. Sometimes buy the rumor, sell the fact. Just is the futures market. So let's see if we can't sustain this a little better today.
But Brad, it really doesn't feel like we have a lot of weather premium in this market. You've got this first big snowstorm that you talk about. Talk about what it is going to mean for feedlot performance. And we're also hearing of maybe a few packing plants that are at least going to be limited in terms of shifts today.
Right. Let's talk about the closings first. I don't have exactly a whole list of them. They're a little private about that information, but I know that we lost the B shift or the second shift at a couple of places where you would expect, right? Nebraska yesterday, where the kind of the epicenter, where the worst of that weather was between Grand Island and Omaha, Sioux City, up in that stretch. Although right where I sit, we had 10 inches of snow too, and it's going to be 20 below Saturday. So I think what used to be anyway was you'd hear some of these, and there's plant closing stories today too, all the way down into Kansas where they might miss a shift or something like that. The old days, the market would say, well, okay, so what if we don't kill 25 or 30,000 cattle? The impact that the weather had on the cattle outside in the feed yards is much more important. In other words, slowing the weight gain. And especially when you, in my opinion, when you look at what we've just gone through, we've gone through maybe a time where couldn't have had a better conditions. Okay. A lot of these cattle never had a bad day from midsummer on. And so these cattle explode, right? So somebody that owns cattle, I know what happens when you have this deal now. So now these cattle go from growing 4 pounds a day to all of a sudden, wham, stand still, lose weight. Now you're going to feed them for 2 or 3 weeks to try to get their weight back to where it was before that. So you're going to see a big drop in performance and in the weight of the cattle, in my opinion. So now the weights themselves have tapered off the last 3 weeks. Last week's weights, the steer and heifer carcass weights, the comprehensive, the one that's all inclusive that I watch, which is 2 weeks old by the time we get it, it was down 3 weeks from the week before. Still 9 over a year ago, but down 3 pounds from the week before. So we're starting to see that weight taper off. Now I'd be curious to see when the USDA decides it's okay for us to know in 2 weeks what the average weights are going to do this week. I would expect that we would see a big decrease, which should give us a little bit of a chance to have a little more leverage back in the feed yard.
Yeah, let's hope so. To your point about slaughter, only 115,000 head yesterday. So obviously there was some impact from the weather. What are you thinking about cash this week, though?
Higher. That's what I think.
Okay.
At least in this area, I think the producer's going to be he's going to be more worried about scraping yards, hauling snow, trying to get these cattle comfortable than whether what if they would happen to take these cattle next week, after taking a hit from the weather. So either it'll be a no trade deal, in my opinion, or at least in the north, will be somewhat resistant. Now, the market in the north was quite a bit better than the way the thing finished Friday, like in Nebraska and in the south. 175, quite a few cattle traded at 175. A few cattle even traded a little bit better than that up here. So I think we're 175 plus, at least on guys that are willing to try to sell some cattle into this weather. Seems like the beef market stabilized here for the moment. So I'm going to be a little bit optimistic. The show lists here are not big at all. In fact, the show list right in my area, probably the smallest it's been in 8 or 9 months. So I think we're in pretty good shape. Let's see if we can have a little resolve in the feed yard.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about box beef because it had a pretty good slide there, but hopefully we've stabilized. Well, as we speak, as you mentioned, cattle have come back in the green, but hogs also in the green here today. And is this all just short covering after we got down to those contract lows? Did we just get oversold? Is that all we're seeing?
On the hogs, is that the question, Michelle?
Yes, on the hogs.
Yeah, it has to be, because boy, I tell you what, if you can come up with some good fundamental news, please share it with me and the rest of the industry. Average weights are huge. Supply of hogs big. Difficulty getting hogs scheduled to be harvested on a timely basis around here, and we've got a jillion hogs around here. Demand is pretty good, but it's got to be perfect when you throwing this much supply at the market. So yeah, I'm going to call the thing a short covering bounce. Now, I think the Feb hogs have kind of an important spot here at that 72.45 level. We're within 30-40 cents of it right here. That's where we failed here a couple of weeks ago. Let's watch that level real closely. I would say coming off, $7 off the lows with the kind of fundamentals we have, I would have a hard time being inspired here to think the market has a lot left in it.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, grains are mixed right now. Corn is trying to come back, and that's after making new contract lows. I know the fundamentals aren't great, but do you think that we have pushed the corn market down too far here with the fundamentals that we have, or not?
I'm glad we've only got a minute or two left to talk about it, because I'm running out of stuff to say about the grains. Yeah, absolutely. I think that down here, okay, here's one of those old guy commodity sayings again. I think too weak to buy, too low to sell. Now you've got March corn about where the December got down to. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that makes these chart people happy. The cure for low prices is low prices. Wouldn't we expect to see a little bit? Maybe we'll see that on that report coming up this week. Would we not expect to see a little better demand for $4.50 corn than we had for $7 corn? The ethanol grind you'd think would be better. And the whole bean story seems to be, where did we get off the track here of long-term demand issues on the bean thing is pretty positive. I mean, the whole bio deal and everything. And yet we've got one system of rain in South America completely changed the psychology altogether. I'm with you. I think down here the market's way overdone. Funds are a giant short in the corn. I'd love to see some kind of spark enough to see them to get some short covering. But I would agree. I think both grain and both corn, beans, and wheat for that matter seem to be undervalued to me down here.
And so with that in mind, with this big sell-off, how bearish does the USDA report on Friday have to be to continue to pound the market?
It feels like I'm just looking at estimates here earlier today before you and I got on it. Historically, this January report can be have some fireworks, and the estimates I'm looking at looks like we're just going to yawn it, limp it on in here with yield estimates left unchanged from last month. Slight changes in the harvested acres, a few less on the corn, a few more on the beans. I don't know. I guess if there's a surprise there, maybe you get some surprise from the world ending stocks, where there's a lot of private people that think that South American crop is still a lot smaller than what the USDA number's using.
Yeah,
I feel like, you could die of old age waiting for those numbers to straighten out from them. If there's a surprise to me, it would come in on the ending stocks number, and that would be because you'd see an improvement in demand that maybe they'd want to throw at us.
Yeah, well, leaning this hard negative going into the report, hopefully we'll get a bounce regardless. All right, thanks for joining us, Brad Kooima with Kooima Varilek. That's Markets Now.